Not much, not much, as I'm like finishing my last bite before we start, you know, how we roll.
Oh
Uh,
my goodness. I have not eaten today. It's the afternoon when we're doing this. I haven't really eaten. Is that true? Yeah, I've had snacks, but I haven't eaten a meal.
yeah, I was munching on some grapes before we started because I was like a little bit of sugar to like
Smart,
get me going.
smart, 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 smart,
Yes.
smart. Okay. So we are carrying on with our talk about the different archetypes for the
Yes.
program that we have created. We've been spending time creating the herd intelligence, which if you missed the other episode, go back and watch it and you'll hear a little bit more, and go to our website and you'll see more information about herd intelligence. But it's exciting because what we're talking about are the different types of people. Well, see, now I've gone ahead of
Behaviors.
myself.
Yeah.
Behaviors. Yes. We're talking about behaviors, and we said that we're going to start each one of these with just saying, do you see this person on your team? And
Yes.
so today we're talking about the person who's been there forever,
Eva, Eva.
forever. The person who has a lot of the institutional knowledge. The
Hmm.
person who is kind of, if they say, yeah, this is a good idea, the whole team is going along. If they say, oh, hell no, this is not good, the whole team is
We
like,
lose them
hell
all.
no, this is not good. We're not doing it,
Yeah.
right? It's the person where, oh, we tried this before and it didn't work, right? It's that person. And
Yes.
we name them the legend.
The legend. Yes, and I would say the other piece that, and we're going to talk about this part too, but it's probably good to call out on sort of the legend is they should be leaving soon. Like this person is getting close to the end of their career, so they're the people impacting succession planning, right? Whether it's even conscious that they're impacting succession planning, they're impacting succession planning. It might be unconscious, but because they're the one who's going to, they're coming close to retirement, they're coming close to the end of their career. They play a role in that succession planning because they're not going to be there for that much longer.
Yeah. So they have a lot of the knowledge that needs to be passed on,
Yeah.
right? And so how do we do that succession planning? Um, and sometimes, because I remember working with someone where they didn't want to leave. Like they were approaching
Yeah.
retirement age and they were like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving. And so they kind of, it's like they hoard the knowledge. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, and that's it. I think there's almost like two different types of legends, right? You've got
Mhm.
and in our world, we talk about when we kind of so we said this in the last episode, but I don't think we could say it enough. We look at an organization as a system, which is where the herd intelligence comes from. It's a collective. And we've got a whole bunch of stuff on why the elephant herd and why that's what we're leaning into with this. But as a whole, the concept is it's that the organization is a system, and that system involves people and the behaviors that people show up with. And those behaviors look different based on the environment which I'm in, as well
Mhm.
as the relationship that I have. But then it's also situational. So we talk about it. The model that we use, we look at whether somebody is drifting, which might mean that they're not performing or behaving at their best, whether they are grounded. So, if I'm grounded, I'm in an okay spot. I'm probably doing well, but I'm not necessarily guiding, which is the other side. And in that
Mhm.
guiding side, it's when I'm really, really like contributing. So, if we look at the legend and what that legend can show up as, because there really is sort of, I'll say sort of the two sides of the legend. There's that person who's guiding is what I would say is the person who's looking to leave a legacy, right? So they're really wanting to do that knowledge transfer because they want that future secured. They care about the future of the organization. Or if, say, I have a book of business, they care about my clients continuing and that book continuing
Right.
on past me, right? So that's that
Mhm.
guiding versus on the drifting, it's just what you're talking about. It's they're blocking the future, right? Like that's the person who doesn't, and they might not even realize they're doing it, but they're blocking the future. And so that's sort of the two sides of the legend, that they both have so much knowledge to give, but their power can be used for good or evil. And
Influential. They're
yeah,
probably the most influential person on the team.
even if, again, even if they don't carry a title, right? They're
Hmm.
influential because
Hmm.
people have looked up to them for a number of years. You've hired somebody and gone, be like Joe. And like,
Hmm.
that's what's
Hmm.
happened. Joe's been here forever. This is Joe. Joe's worked here for 45 years. Like, you've set them up as the legend, and then you wonder why what they say is what goes. And I think there's a lot of truth to what they say. We probably have tried that idea before and it failed. Doesn't mean it won't work this time. Like, they're not necessarily wrong, right? Or, I like one of the ones that I always go back to is from people who I've worked with in the past was, it's the I did my dues, they have to do theirs. And it's right? Like,
Right, 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 right.
and I laugh because, and I think that's where we start to get into the generational stuff, right? And I look at the generational stuff from a few different lenses. Like, I was the person, Jen, you were the person where we did the 100-hour weeks to grow our
Mhm.
career and to earn our way into leadership. And like, when my son looked at me one day and went, I only want to work 20, 30 hours a week. Like, what? And like looked at me with like mass confusion. I can so clearly remember saying to one of my nearest, dearest, longest friends who we grew up in leadership together. I looked at her and I went, I think he's smarter than us. I don't even
Well,
want to hold
they
it
definitely
against
have
him. I think he's smarter
better
than us.
boundaries. Better boundaries. Definitely. Definitely.
but
Definitely.
but there's judgment that comes with sort of that legend. It's almost like an earned level of, it's almost like there's this feeling that I've earned the right to judge, or I've earned the right to say, because I have been here that long. And again, that's where it's that unconscious blocking that they don't even realize what they're doing.
Yeah. 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 And so, okay, so I'm a leader, right?
Yep.
And I'm realizing, hey, you know what? I have a legend or two on my team.
Yep.
What do I do? How do I work with them most
Where
effectively?
do we
How
start?
to ensure that they're part of the herd, part of the team?
Yeah. And I think this is where I think one of the reasons why we think the legend is such an important archetype to work to understand and to figure out how do we support them, because like we do a lot of work in industries, whether it's manufacturing, insurance, um, some of those spaces where we're seeing huge succession risk, right? Like, we're seeing the risk of what happens when when these legends retire and there's
Mm-hmm.
not somebody new to take over for them, or will they take over at the same level that this legend has built?
Yeah.
And how do we do that? What does the new world look like? Because it is different than what it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I would say step one is it is actually doing that reality check to start to go, what are the things that I learned that are going to be transferable? And what are the things that maybe we don't want transferred? Because where I've seen things go wrong is where we've tried to use the legend as a bit of a knowledge transfer mentor, and we've just given them free will. And that isn't necessarily what we want to
Doesn't
have
always
happen.
work.
Doesn't always work. So I think step one as a leader is doing a bit of an evaluation on what are the, when we think about this legend, when we think about the awesomeness that they have built over their years and years within the organization, what parts of that awesomeness do we want transferred? Like, what do we want them to build as a legacy? Because it's not going to be everything. It's a different world.
Mm-hmm.
We do things a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so we want the knowledge transfer, and at the same
Mhm.
time, so here's the flip side of it, right? So when I was in child welfare, my last few years, we were changing the whole recording system, right?
Okay.
And so um, people that were close to retirement said, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to retire early because I don't want to have to learn this whole new system. I'm done.
Yes.
I'm out of here, right? And so with the changes, like it is a different world than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
right? The the knowledge of the job, there's aspects of it that's going to stay the same, but there's so much of it that changes, and the way we do it changes, that
Hmm.
sometimes the legend stops feeling like a legend. Like they start feeling like they're not needed or they're obsolete.
Yes. Yeah, and I actually think that's a really good example because I know when I was in insurance, one of the things that I was doing was implementing a new CRM, like implementing a new client management system. And one, if you're only 1 to 2 years out from retiring, the last thing you want to do is learn a completely new tech system. Like that's just
Uh-huh.
energy you don't want to put into it. And so the reality is the legends were they were my breaks. Like, they were like, no, this is stupid. We don't need this. And it's not because they didn't see the value for the future, but they were like, I don't want to learn something completely new that I'm never going to actually have the longevity of use for because I'm done.
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
it's recognizing, like, in some ways I'm like, I kind of get it. Like I get why they're doing that. But then at the same time, kind of from what you're saying too, is it's like if the knowledge is all inside my head because that's just where it's lived, now I'm not necessarily as useful if I take that knowledge out of my head and put it into a new tech system. Like if we now have a member management system that has the memory of everything that is in my head, then why do you need me? And so there's a little bit of that can fall in there too. So there's a lot of, like, there's that huge part of me that goes, I get it, because now all of a sudden I don't feel as valued or as needed for my value. And what does that do to somebody on the inside, right? Like,
Yeah.
truly. So I think that's where we have to start to go, okay, so as a leader, how do I, like, it's stepping back, because I think, and I know for me, in the time when I was when I was doing this, I would get frustrated. I'd be like, seriously. But I'm a good salesperson, so I'd try and sell them on the idea. Here's what I need from you. How, like, can you be the person who helps me? But I think where I didn't always do a great job was um, recognizing what it could do to the ego and to them in terms of how much value they were bringing and feeling like they weren't valued anymore. And that when I try, the hindsight lessons, when I try to reinforce that they were valued, I might not have reinforced it in a way that made them actually feel it. So I think that those are some of the things as a leader now, in hindsight, and when I work with groups, that I can really try and get them to try to be more empathetic to what it must feel like to go from being super, super needed to not
Hmm.
necessarily as needed.
Yeah. I actually, it's interesting. So, not a work related, but my mom, right? My
Okay.
mom is the eldest of nine siblings. And then she had her family, and she's like the person that does everything. And now her kids are grown up. And so she's feeling like I'm not needed. And now her grandchildren are grown up, and it's like nobody needs me. Nobody
Yeah.
wants me around. Like there's that
Yeah.
feeling. And so if we transfer that to work, especially for a generation where work was their value. Like that's how
Yes.
they could, feel valued. It's a challenge. And so leaders have to recognize who the legends are on their team, and they
Hmm.
need to have some conversations, right? Have some
Yeah.
conversations about how to keep them engaged and how to be planning succession, or what they want that succession to look like. Like give them a little bit of control in terms of how that succession is going to happen, right?
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think it's also about ensuring that when you're building this out, it's helping them to see that this final chapter, so to speak, that this final chapter is the most important chapter that they can write, and that this is actually how they are so valuable to the organization and to the future and to building the what's next.
Mhm.
Um, and doing that in a way that they are involved in, and doing that in a way that gives them some level of structure, but also make sure that it's like, I don't know, I think sometimes I've seen like people almost, it's the wording that we use. So let's say we're implementing a tech solution, like it we can sometimes minimize the human element when we're implementing a tech solution, right? So that doesn't feel very good to anybody if you're saying,
Mhm.
like, this is so much better than what people can do. Like like you know why, like I get why people in the technology world would say something like that. But again, it's recognizing if you've got this person who's already feeling undervalued, and you've got this person from Salesforce who's saying, it's so much better than people, natural conflict right there.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm going to push back, because I'm going to be like, no, it's not, though. I'm better.
Yeah. And then we also have to, again, we're looking at it from both perspectives, different
Mhm.
perspectives, right? If you recognize yourself as a legend, and you're the legend that I have no intention of leaving anytime soon,
Yeah.
right? I plan on being here for at least another 10 years. It's like, okay, fine, that's cool. But be careful not to necessarily get upset when you are approached about, can we talk about succession? Because if you've been there for 20 years, 30
Yeah.
years, it is very natural for someone to think, all right, you're likely going to be on your way out in the next little while, right?
Yeah.
So that defensiveness that sometimes can happen, because that's what we see. Sometimes there's
Yeah.
this defensiveness, like, I'm not going anywhere, right? Well, let's try to understand where people are coming from.
Yeah. And like, I would think about it from the perspective of like, if I think about some of the guys who I worked with, right? Like it's how could we build potentially like a formal like knowledge transfer role? Because if I think about some of the guys who I worked with, they didn't necessarily want to be out there pounding pavement looking for new sales anymore. But they still had a book that they managed. They still had a business that they were responsible for. And so it's like, how can we create something that is like that true succession plan? What could that look like? How do we, I think about one situation in particular where it was like advisor who was trying to develop their admin person to be the person who took over. So it was like this slow transfer and integration where they partnered together on things. She just started to go to more meetings with him. She started to do things, and so it was like a true mentorship partnership where there was a trust that was also being built, that he
Mhm.
got to create what the next person would do because he was so involved versus just handing it over. Like he really got to build that relationship. He got to set the because I do believe that most people who've been in a client-based role, they care about what happens to the people who are their clients, who they've been serving all this time, right? Like if you
Mhm.
were to stop counseling, you would care about what happened to your patients. So you would want
Mhm.
to make sure they're transferred off well. And I think that that's a pretty consistent thing. So it's like, how do we lean into that? How do we lean into the things that are important? Um, versus always leaning into what's necessarily important to the company. So it's finding that balance, because then for me, I know I want to make sure my clients are taken care of. And so that's sort of the place where I would go if it's me taking ownership, where it's like I owe that to them. Like, they've taken care of me for all these years. I want to make sure they're taken care of.
Right. For sure. For sure. So if you have a legend on your team, right? We
Mhm.
want to ensure that we're bringing them in on changes and on different um, initiatives that might be going on, right? So bringing them in early, even consulting with them and getting their ideas. Like, you have been here for a while, so what have you seen? What has worked? What hasn't? Why? And just getting that information, right?
One of the tricks that I try and get people to consider as well is use your potential naysayers as your experts, right? Because if you can get them to tell you all the things that could go wrong. I have a very crazy analogy, which is a funny analogy. I had a salesperson who was really good at finding the gray in policies. Um, they didn't totally break the rules, but they were really good at finding the gray. So anytime that we were changing like a compensation structure package or changing like a policy, I would show it to them and get
Mm-hmm.
them to like talk to me about it, because because they would essentially tell me all the ways that people would be able to like screw the system. And so it was super helpful to me, because I could proactively then strategize around that. And I think that, like, again, if we use a tech solution, because I think the reality is we're in a world where we're implementing a lot of tech into organizations that haven't always been tech heavy.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so if we think about implementing a tech solution, have your legends tell you all the issues that are going to come out of it. Like, there's actual power in having that information in advance,
For sure.
um, versus waiting for it to come out down the road.
Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. For sure. For sure. It's that plan for the not quite this, but plan for the fail,
Yeah.
right? So, if
Yeah.
you can plan for it, then it makes that transition or whatever smoother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think, um, and it's that fine balance, because I can think of somebody else who I brought onto like an implementation team who really didn't want the implementation. So they pushed against it. So it's like
Uh-uh.
that, it's the figuring out though, but then it's asking ourselves as leaders, right? If they are pushing against it that hard, like, what do we need to do to have that conversation? How do we have that open dialogue so that that's not
Yeah,
really the concern? Like, there's something to that where we have to ask some questions.
for sure. And I mean, and be open to whatever the responses are, right?
Yeah.
Hear it, actually hear it.
Yeah, because
So,
resistance, there's always a reason behind resistance. Like, even if it's, I know, as somebody, like, as the implementer, resistance can be frustrating because it's slowing you down. It's like, I think of another organization that we've worked with where the person who's responsible for a lot of the implementation feels like they're the person who um, is always like seen as the bad guy, because they're the one going, oh, here's the next change, here's the next change, here's the new thing.
mhm,
And everybody pushes against it. And so they always feel like, well, I'm just put in this situation where people just come at me for everything. So it's like, it's that balance of how do
yeah,
we how do we find sort of that happy middle that allows for really strong succession planning, because we can't afford to lose the knowledge. Like, that's the reality. We need the knowledge, um, but it's getting the knowledge in a way that serves everybody, not just in a way that's best for
mm,
the company.
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the question? What's the
Oh, that
question
one
we're
flew
leaving
by.
people with? Yep.
That one flew by. So if I am a legend, and I know, I would ask myself, do I, what is the legacy I want to leave? And if I'm a leader who is leading some legends, do I know what legacy they want to leave? And am I actively working to support it?
That's a good one. That's a good one. All right. We will be back with more archetypes. My name is Jen Matwawana.
And I am Melissa Maloney.
All right. See you, everyone.